Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 12, another 7 curious interesting things I saw last week. So let's crack on. The first one is probably entitled, well, of course we saw this coming. So these are deepfakes used tactically during war. So we've got Putin on the left-hand side and Ukrainian President Zelensky on the right-hand side, both of which have been doctored from initial videos and then using deepfakes. So obviously you got Tom Cruise over the last couple of months. Wasn't that a funny jape that lots of Tom Cruise videos are fake? This is what they're actually going to be used for. So you can see on the right-hand side that little bar filling up on the top of the video. So that's actually from the University of Southern California. They have a way of actually sort of figuring out whether it's fake or real. If it's that olive color, it's fake. If it's the green color, it's real. And as you can see, the majority of the video is fake. So obviously with misinformation being a large part of the Ukrainian conflict, of course we saw this coming. So I've actually been talking for many years about humans are just not able to actually detect this sort of stuff. We're just not made for it. However, computers and AIs can actually detect it, as you can see from the bar chart on the right hand side. So you know, should this really be built into hardware and or operating systems at a basically a core level? Should any media played through any device also have this kind of flag on it? This is fake, this is not. However, we are seeing that, and that is bad. This is also bad, but also did raise a little bit of a smile. It's just cheeky. I thought it was really interesting in that scammers are now using Captcha codes to help them. So how does that work? Well, obviously, if you I've gone to a website that needs to figure out whether you're human or not, then you probably have to tick this little box. And it does a number of things. It uses delays and all those sorts of things. Computers don't really know how to tick that where it is, etc. However, what scammers are doing is they're initially sending you to a page with a captcha code on it. You are then saying, I'm not a robot, because robots can't generally get past this step. And then it sends you, it redirects you onto the actual scam page. So therefore, if you are a do-gooding, looking for viruses and scams robot, scouring the internet to keep people safe, you will hit this page and you cannot answer this because you are a robot, and therefore you will not go to the scamming page, and therefore you can't report it. So I thought it was really interesting how captcha codes are essentially being used to cloak or to hide actual scams, because it's not letting the robots through who are usually detecting those scams. But there you go, an unforeseen use of technology, and therefore that's what's in the Dinosaw. So this is Pockit, which is really interesting. Now, we've seen a bunch of these before. You might have remembered Google's Ara, which was the modular phone, and they just fail, basically. They've never really made it through. However, this one looks really interesting. So this is the hardware equivalent of low code, no code, really. So and again, we've seen things like Arduino and Raspberry Pi, this is actually powered by Raspberry Pi. However, it just makes it really simple. So everything is connected. If you put in a mini keyboard, it knows what's going on. If you put in, for instance, just a slider little module and a screen, it'll go, well, the only thing I'm connected to is a slider module, so I'll show you the value of the slider module, that sort of thing. So everything is kind of aware of everything else. So there are 80 modules that are currently available. It's only a demo at the moment. It hasn't actually been produced, but it's kind of in the basically the spirit of Kickstarter. It's still being developed, and therefore more videos are coming out about it. Everything's magnetic, so everything snaps together. Just really cool. So I like that. Watch out for that. As soon as that comes out, I will probably be buying one of those. There you go. Netflix is cracking down on password sharing. Of course they would do at some point. Now, up until this point, they didn't really mind it. Now, I've been at a couple of conferences where senior people at Netflix have sort of turned a blind eye to it and done it relatively publicly, saying, well, you know, we're building audience at the moment, so therefore we're a bit lax about it. Now, audiences are starting to stagnate or starting to wane. Obviously, that curve is starting to flatten, so they still need to make a bunch of money, mainly because they still have huge production costs. So they've got things like all of their originals, studios, you know, all of that sort of stuff to actually generate the content that they need to satisfy their audience. So how do you make money out of a waning audience? Is you basically start to look in the gaps. Now, the gaps are the people who are sharing passwords. So not that I condone condone this, but imagine if you did pay for Netflix and you gave your your password to somebody else, that can now be detected. So they will flag up on your account and say, hey, we've noticed the person that's using your password is not actually living with you. So how's that going to happen? So in Chile, Costa Rica, and Peru, they're starting this this test where they will give the account holder two options. One is they will say, well, you can choose to pay $2.99, roughly $3 a month, to keep this person on your account. So legitimize that person. And the second thing you can do is you can say, or you can ask that person to start their own account, but we'll make it easy for you to port their data, their viewing data, their history over to their new accounts, because obviously that's the right thing to do. So just to give you an idea of the scale of this, so in the US alone, this is estimated to actually gain something like 10 to 20 million subs if this came in. So as I say, starting in sort of South America, and we'll see how that goes, but that may well be coming to a streaming service near you. If you're doing this right now, then it seems like there's a bit of a soft approach to it, but they will be hardening that approach pretty soon. Really, I'm fascinated by this, have been for years and years and years. Food and innovation and behaviour, basically. Clearly there is a connection between all of these things, but this is a series of studies, and this has been going on for many, many years, decades in fact. And it's looking at the connection between food intake, especially certain minerals and fatty acids like omega-3, for instance, and violence. Now this is especially in prisons. So I've had a quick trawl of jail truths on Instagram. It's a fairly harrowing look at prison life, but it's a fairly realistic one. Found these high resolution images of the food. Now you can see over indexes on the brown and let's say the yellow spectrum. And therefore what they've actually done some tests. They had basically cohorts that have gone through different food regimes, should we say, over the couple of years, and actually say that actually if you fed people the correct diet with the right minerals and omega-3s, it would actually on average reduce violence and suicide by 30%. So that's clearly a good thing, and it doesn't cost a huge amount of money either. However, this does also apply to creativity, it applies to innovation, it applies to everything. So, this sort of thing, if your company has a restaurant or a canteen or a cafe and it isn't on this, then it really should be. So there you go. Yeah, food and behaviour. Who'd have thought they are connected, but they can make everything a little bit better. The Splinternet is maybe a word that you should be thinking about. Again, this is partly or mainly due to the Russia-Ukraine issue, but actually we've seen sort of elements of this before with maybe China, maybe Iran, that sort of thing. The Splinternet is basically saying what would happen if a large chunk or a big country would actually separate off from the internet as we know it and would not use the same hardware as us or the same platforms as us. So broadly speaking, everything uses sort of the US version of the internet. So servers, the HTTP protocol, FTP protocol, etc., all of that good stuff. What happens if an entire country doesn't use that? You end up with a splinternet. So it's a splintering of the internet, and therefore you can have things like entire disinformation campaigns and/or entire currencies or information pools, databases that you don't have access to. So there you go. So the internet as we know it might be under strain or under threat. So there you go. So the splinternet may be a thing that you might need to worry about quite soon. And finally, deep breath and positivity. So Mr. Do, who I've been following for years and years and years, Ricardo, his name is, basically follow him on Twitter and you will not be disappointed. If you're into sort of tech and creativity, that's what he does. If you use 3JS, for instance, a 3D library on the internet, then he created that. However, he's been experimenting with cuteness, and cuteness using OpenAI's clip guided diffusion. Now, I won't go too far into it, but basically it is a library where you type in words and it will then try and generate images based on those words. So obviously Mr. Doob has been doing great work into trying to figure out the exact combination of words to try and get cuteness overload. So as you can see in front of you, these are what you can see. Now, the reason I thought this was really interesting is, especially the top two on the left, possibly the one in the middle on the bottom row. You know, those are not a million miles away from characters that I would expect to see on Pixar movies or in the latest version of Kidscreen magazine, you know, about sort of kids' characters, etc., etc. So, okay, so this is interesting. So we've seen generative adversarial networks generating art before, but now we're seeing it actually trying to figure out what cuteness is. And you see there's little glossy dots in the eyes and all that sort of stuff. So wide eyes, glossy dots, lots of pink, big ears, fur, all those sorts of things are indicators of cuteness. So there you go. So we've now got computers figuring out what cute is, which, you know, stare straight into our souls and make us go, oh, those are nice. But these are generated by computers. Anyway, follow Mr. Doob. You will not be disappointed. But there you go. Will the future of character creation be made by a computer? Probably. Anyway, hopefully that was useful. If it was interesting, give us a like, give us a share, introduce the Dinosaw to somebody else. The more the merrier. So hopefully that was good, and I will speak to you next week.